Hi, I'm Eleanor Meyerhofer, a native Californian, designer, and digital strategist. In October of 1999, a few years after graduating from design school, I flew from San Francisco to Munich with a fistful of Deutschmarks, a dial-up connection, and an extremely vague plan. 20 plus years later, after a 10-year stint at a global agency, freelancing, and launching 2 online businesses, I'm still here. Now I'm talking to other expat business owners to share knowledge, stories, and inspiration for other non-Germans running businesses in Germany. I am here with John Ismailoglu.
We practiced a lot. You got it right. I love it.
Thank you. And I'm just going to kick it off with the question I ask everyone on this podcast, which is, what is the 2-minute story of how you ended up in Germany?
And I think this is one of the most common questions I get, so happy to answer it. Initially, it was for a woman. So at that time, my spouse is originally from Berlin, a true Berlin. And if I wanted to define it further, a Gastarbeiterkind. And I did live in Berlin about 13 years ago for a short time, completely different city. I actually did not like it at all back then. And there was a bit of back and forth between the US and Germany. And now, as of 7 years, I've been here. And similar to you, I don't have any immediate plans of going back, because I think when you leave the US, you start realizing all of the good things that this country has to offer. Not to say that it's perfect, because there's a lot of areas of improvement for Germany. But yeah, that's how I originally got here. And then when kids came to the picture and school started and you form a business, the anchor that you drop just gets deeper and heavier. So I'm here. I don't think I'm going anywhere anytime soon.
Okay, so let me get this straight. You were born and raised in the States.
I was born and raised in the States, so specifically in northern New Jersey.
Okay.
And I grew up there for some time, lived in basically the New York metropolitan area, so spent some time in Long Island as well, and a true East Coaster at heart.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll set that aside for now.
Yeah, all right. You're from the West Coast. I know. It's all love. It's all good.
But you said Gastarbeiterkind.
Yeah, not me, my spouse.
Okay.
So her parents came to Germany as guest workers with the wave of Turkish people that came about 55 years ago. And the reason I was born in the United States is because my dad made it there as a refugee in 1968. So I'm the proud child of a refugee.
Directly from Turkey?
No, he has a bit of an interesting story, which I think could be a podcast episode in and of itself. But real quickly, he was born and raised in Bulgaria, escaped a communist regime, made it to Turkey, was jailed on the suspicion of being a spy, then went to Italy after begging consulates to give him a chance, stayed in Italy for a few years, and then as part of a church mission, came to the US as a refugee to New York City.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you don't mind me asking, then your ethnicity is actually Bulgarian?
No, Turkish. So there's a large population of Turkish people who, it's that part of the world has a rich history. So if you really want to define it, if you look at the Ottoman Empire, which lasted 600 years, there's a lot of Turkish people that are still living in countries outside of Turkey. So these would be categorized as Balkan Turks, the ones that are in Bulgaria.
I see.
In that part of the world. So it's like me, right? Turkish, but born and raised in New York. He was Turkish, but born and raised in Bulgaria.
Okay, so on your side, there is no Turkish-German connection, like
zero. And I had no ambitions of living in Germany. I mean, the only connection to Germany was through my affinity for cars, and I love German cars. So little did I know I'd be living here. So here I am.
Okay. So you're like a fourth culture person. You've got all kinds of things.
So many. Yeah, you know what? I feel like the United Nations at time, and I really wouldn't have it any other way, especially growing up in the New York metropolitan area. I mean, it's such a diverse, arguably the most diverse part of the world. And I just love seeing people from different backgrounds and countries living together in harmony. And I think that's why Berlin resonates with me so much, because you do get that to a certain degree. Not as extreme as New York, but there are good elements of that here.
Yeah. Okay, well, I don't know how I stumbled across you on LinkedIn, but I did, and I'm glad.
Mm-hmm.
And you are the founder of a company called, call it INSRD?
Yes.
Okay. Tell me about that.
So let's go back about 2 decades. That's when I got into the insurance industry, and I didn't grow up as a kid wanting to become an insurance person. I don't think any child does. But for me, it was a matter of being in college and I needed a job. So the only place that really worked with my school schedule was a call center where you can sell car insurance over the phone 24 hours a day. So that's how I got into the industry. I had no plans of continuing. But after that gig, I went to a job recruiter and she was like, hey, you have a little bit of experience in insurance. Seems like you know how to sell. Why don't you just continue? And, as an early 20 something, I was like, yeah, okay, fine. That sounds good. Well, fast forward, a lot of different types of experiences in the industry, both on the agency, brokerage, and insurance company sides of business. Went from handling very basic risks to then now handling very complex and specialty risks. So when I came to Germany, I obviously wanted to continue in the insurance world, but you need to become a licensed insurance professional here, specifically a geprüfter Fachmann für Versicherungsvermittlung. So all of the study, all of the testing, all that stuff is done in German. Initially, I was hesitant. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to do this. But one day I just bit the bullet. I took 18 months study, condensed it into 10 weeks, translated hundreds of pages, got my license, and then that opened the path to get started. So initially I started at a agency as part of Allianz's captive agency network. Saw an opportunity where there's tens of thousands of people like me in this city who are English speaking that need services or more specifically support with their insurances. And that's how I got started here, and getting deeper into that network and into those groups of people realized, hey, it's not just individuals that need this help. It's also companies. And that's where the focus on startups, scale-ups, and tech organizations began. So initially there was a plan to make this a unit within a larger corporate structure, realized that's never going to happen in a corporate environment. And that's when the idea was planted in my mind where, okay, this needs to become its own thing. And early last year, February, I left that world and go straight into the startup world by forming my own company together with my co-founder, Stefan Bay. And what we do is we provide insurance and risk mitigation solutions for startups, scale-ups, and tech companies today. Pretty soon, I think this is going to be aired some point first quarter of 2024. I think by then we'll have announced it, but we will be branching into other areas. And what we're doing is serving industries and companies that are currently underserved by the industry. And that's our unique positioning. We have the right solutions to make sure that they manage, mitigate, and handle all of their risks in a efficient way.
Okay, I have a bunch of questions, but
go for
it. Just first, what are some underserved industries? Because I will say, when I came to Germany, I had no idea there was so much insurance.
They love insurance here. Yeah.
They really do.
So you would think that since it's such an insurance-loving country, that everybody would be covered and served properly. I mean, so serving for me is two things. One, customer service. Look, coming from the US, it's not the greatest here in Germany, let's be real. And secondly is when you look at certain companies and the risk profiles they have, from an insurance company standpoint, if a business's activities fall outside of, let's say, the traditional mold, and they do maybe more specialty business activities, well, then it's hard to find individuals to service their needs, right? Okay. And if you pair that with the fact that most founders of startup scale-ups are non-native to this country and may not necessarily speak German, well, then, yeah, the level of being underserved, I think, triples. So we notice there's these people, this huge group that need help and they're not getting, and we kept on hearing the same things, right? We tried to get insurance. No one gets back to us. They don't understand the type of business. We buy the policies. It doesn't accurately reflect what we're doing. We feel like we're just paying for a piece of paper. When we ask questions, we're not getting the answers. And when you hear that like 100 times, okay, there's a problem. And for me, a problem is something that can be solved. And that's exactly what INSRD did when we launched. We said, let's solve this problem for these people. And in running the company for the past year, we've identified a lot more problems that need solving, and we'll be tackling those in 2024.
Okay. I want to go back to when you got here and you did the very long word for becoming an official insurance guy.
Yeah.
So did you speak German?
So my German is interesting. When I lived here a long time ago, I did the intensive class, so that really set a strong foundation. I spoke it really well back then, but there was such a huge gap where I didn't use it. So I lost the speaking component of it, not entirely, but let's say by 75, 60%. The comprehension part never went away, so I understand it really well. I don't have any problem in understanding German. Speaking, especially within the context of more let's say, formal settings.
Mm-hmm.
My skills aren't there. But for this exam, I already had 15 years of experience in the insurance world. It was just a matter of understanding how it's done here,
Mm-hmm.
translating that material into a language that I understand, which is English, and
Mm-hmm.
doing what's necessary to pass the exam. So I think you could break it down into two categories. One, you have regular German, and then
Mm-hmm.
you have insurance German, and
Right.
and and that's basically contract talk, legal talk, right?
Okay.
And I don't care what language it's in. It's usually doesn't reflect the ease of speaking that language. So it was a challenge. I have to say it was probably the hardest thing that I've done from an educational standpoint in my life. I was very close to quitting, but good thing I didn't. I pushed through and made it out alive.
Okay. And yeah, I can't imagine. I used to be really good, but then after I got married, if I get something from the insurance company, I just hand it to my husband. So, can you talk a little bit about what it was like when you decided, okay, no, I'm going to start my own thing? What did that process look like for you?
So the first thing is making the decision to actually take that step, right? And when you're in a position where you have that security, it's a tough one to make because you're breaking away from that and saying, you know what, I'm going to fly on my own. But when you pair it together with the right team and the right plan and vision, that makes it much easier. From a bureaucratic standpoint, I mean, it goes without saying there was a ton of challenges or annoyances that we had to handle. So, forming a company, going to the notary, signing papers, going to the Amt, getting the right documents in order to get set up. I mean, that's just the pain that comes with forming a company in this country. And then it's a matter of, okay, we see an opportunity, let's go after it. And we were able to quickly prove that the ideas that we had or the problems that we perceived were real and that we were able to come up with a solution for it. And then you just continue building on that. So I can go into this in very fine detail, but keep it short. That's the way we approached it.
You mentioned you have a family and security and going out on your own
Hmm.
and the risks associated with that. Did you have, and you can share as much or as little as
Hmm.
you want, but did you have any kind of funding, or did you bootstrap, or did you just know you were going to be able to get enough clients right out of the gate? Like, how did you handle going from being employed to starting your own business?
Yeah, so we were fortunate enough to hit the ground running hard and just start selling, right? So
Okay.
with insurance, you sell, you get your commission, and then that translates to revenue, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not to say that it was easy in the beginning. I mean, there's still a process of gaining the trust of people under this entirely new brand. I knew a lot of people, but that doesn't really mean anything to the greater market. So again, for us, it was, I don't want to say easier, but we were fortunate enough to get out there and sell, which brought in money. So we did bootstrap for quite some time. We did raise a angel round, which we'll be announcing soon. And of course, that's going to help propel our efforts a bit further.
Okay. Let's talk about selling.
Yeah,
So, I mean, you said, and you strike me as someone who's probably good at selling, and I mean that as a compliment.
thank you.
So, I mean, I remember I had when I started when I worked at the agency for years here and was like knew what behind the ears. They sent me to an insurance marketer to pick my private health insurance then.
Okay.
And I am forever grateful to this guy because he knew the policy he gave me. He said, not all companies will cover you in your home country, especially if you're American. And
Hmm.
I actually ended up years ago in a hospital and was like, had 100,000 euros in bills. And they're like, no, we'll pay it all. And I was just like, thanks for that guy.
So
Uh,
refreshing as an American, right?
yeah. But it could have, even with German health insurance, if I didn't have that policy, it wouldn't have been so easy
Hmm.
or covered.
Hmm.
But so are you in a situation where companies, they have certain legal requirements to have insurance? Or are you going to them explaining why it's a good idea? Like what's your in to
Yeah, no. So there's really only one insurance company that's obligatory here in Germany, and that's your workplace accident insurance, right? So
Mhm.
beyond that, you really don't need insurance. I mean, you also don't need a parachute when you jump out of an airplane. You don't need a
Right.
spare tire in your car. You don't have to wear your seatbelt, but that's usually not the best practice, right? So our approach is pretty simple. We talk to our customers, understand the type of businesses that they run,
Mhm.
where they're at today, where they want to be in the future, and then develop a plan to help them understand their risks and say, today, based on what we've understood about you, these are the coverages that you should consider, right? So
Hmm.
nothing more, nothing less. And then we develop a roadmap as they grow, as they pivot, as they expand into new markets. We then say, okay, it's time to talk about this policy. So it's very targeted, and our mantra is nothing more, nothing less. Whatever you need today is what we'll suggest to you.
Okay. Okay. Can I ask you, asking for a friend,
Yeah.
what are your, like, you have, like, off the top of your head, three things that you recommend, like, say, a solopreneur web designer should have?
Okay. Well, look, the insurance setup is very specific to each company, but there is a general rule of thumb. The foundational coverage that most companies and solopreneurs typically obtain is liability coverage, right? So if you cause damages to someone else, or if you don't deliver your services in the way you promised them and you get sued or there's a claim brought against you, this is the foundational coverage that I would say 99% of our clients obtain. And then it really branches off into a variety of other insurances. If you're, for example, handling a lot of sensitive data, you may want to consider cyber. If you have employees and you're worried about employee lawsuits, there's insurance for that. If you have a lot of hardware, there's insurance. So the list goes on and on and
Yeah.
on, but it typically starts with liability. That's where most of our clients begin.
Yeah. Last year, at the beginning of, I think it was last year, you may or may not have heard about this, but there was a big open question about Google fonts being legal in Germany. And that was like a scary moment because a couple, not many, but a couple clients were coming to me, and that's built in. Google fonts are built into the platform I use. And it was really scary for me to think, like, oh, wait, is this my responsibility? And none of the companies really talking about it because nobody knew. But that was the first time I really kind of thought, ooh, I need to kind of cover my ass here a little bit because am I responsible?
Yeah.
Anyway, so we talked a little bit about this, or you mentioned some of the bureaucracy, but in your view, like, what would you say are some of the pros of running a business in Germany?
Great question. I see a lot of opportunity in this country, especially when personally I keep my eyes and ears on the US to see what's going on with the insurance companies and insurtechs there and seeing what they've achieved and how they've become successful. Well, when you see the markets that they've captured and you realize similar markets exist here without those solutions being present, well, to me, that's opportunity,
Mm,
right? So a country like the US, particularly the area that I come from, there's so much competition. It's super saturated. Here, it's a bit more of an open field. So in
mm.
that respect, I say Germany's and Europe as a whole even is a great opportunity, depending on what it is that you're selling or what services you're providing. So not so much saturation as there is back home.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know the reason, but I can tell you that Germany specifically tends to be anywhere from 3 to 5 years behind the US when it comes to technology.
Mm,
It's like this wave that takes a while to get over here. If I had to take a guess, it could be due to the general conservative mindset that exists here. There's a lot of established processes, industries, and things that have been working so well for so long, where I feel there's an attitude that, why change it if it works,
hmm
right? Which I agree with to a certain point, but that can be also very detrimental, right? You need to be open to change. You need to embrace technology. This doesn't mean going crazy and having the robots take over everything that we do,
hmm
but at the same time, there needs to be understanding that there are other ways to do things and that those should be embraced in a balanced way.
hmm hmm Yeah, that makes sense. I realize I want to go back to selling a little bit.
Yep.
So, okay, so there's only the one requirement, and you knew you could hit the ground running selling. Did you have, was it because you had a big network? Like,
Yeah.
how are
Yeah.
you able to do that?
So when I came here, I had no network. I mean, I didn't know anybody, I didn't know anything, and it was a bit challenging because you come from a country where you had a network.
Hmm.
I still had the experience. No one took that away from me. That didn't go anywhere, but I didn't have the network. So coming here, I said I need to build one, and I need to do it quick. So when I got started, or when I made the decision to form a network, it was around October, November of 2019. And what I did was I went to a ton of events,
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes 4 to 5 a week, just meeting people, shaking hands, understanding what ecosystems like, who's in this environment, et cetera. That was going great until this little pandemic got in the way and everything got shut down. And that's when I started thinking, okay, how do I continue doing this? Like, I need to do this if I want to be successful here in this country. And that's when I turned my head towards LinkedIn. I mean, I always had an account. I like never used it. I said, you know what, let me give this thing a try. And that's when I realized, okay, so you can do this on a social media platform without having to run to events all the time. And it's been so awesome in terms of meeting people, gaining knowledge, getting customers, and still to this day, I have no strategy. People ask me all the time, how do you do it? The only thing I do is every morning I carve out 15 to 20 minutes, or almost every morning, post whatever's on my mind with the hopes that people who read it like it. And the one thing I keep in my mind is, what would my customers want to hear? What do they want to know about? So since
Yeah.
we deal with startups, there's a lot of information that I share around funding, around general startup stats here in Germany and across Europe. And it's proven to work, which has been awesome. And that activity, which I've done on that platform, is what really propels my network, right? Because when you're sharing certain information, you start getting the attention of people that you want to work with. And then it's so easy to reach out to people on this platform. I think you get access to people that you normally wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
through traditional ways. It's just a matter of dropping the right message, and oftentimes you're connected, and next thing you know, you're talking, doing business, etc. So yeah, network is a super crucial one, and that I would say is the key element to what has allowed me to do what I am doing today in this country.
Yeah, I heart LinkedIn and would second that, and kind of fell into it when I started getting cold leads because I thought it was just a graveyard for my old CV, and I
Exactly.
never
Yeah,
wanted to
yeah,
go
yeah,
back
yeah,
to a
yeah,
9 to 5. But then it was like, oh no, no, this is like a,
yeah, yeah,
a never-ending business cocktail
yeah,
mixer.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I was going to ask you that question, but you answered it because everybody should go to John's profile on LinkedIn. He has great content. On any given day, there will
Thank
be
you.
like a James Brown gif or really interesting stats on like where do you have, okay, if you really just sit down each day like and just let the spirit move you, you don't have like kind of a bucket of topics you talk about or what?
So it is very spirit driven, although if I come across a piece of content or some information that I think could be useful, um, I basically have a folder where I bookmark everything, and
Mm-hmm.
then it's just like this huge repository of information. And that's really it. I mean, again, oftentimes people ask me what's the deal behind this? How do you do it? I think the number one thing is just being consistent. Just being
Mm-hmm.
consistent, getting into the habit of posting, understanding that when you first start, you're probably going to have very low reach. No one's going to engage, and that's fine. As long as you keep going at it and start understanding what content resonates well with whom,
Mm-hmm.
then I think you can find some success. And the other piece of information that I give, and I try to stick to this, is just be authentic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just keep it real. I understand that people oftentimes want to share all the good things in life, which is fine, but I tell a lot of people, don't get blinded by that, because that's not reality. That's
Mm-hmm.
not reality. Everyone's sharing the happy moments. Nobody
Yeah.
wants to talk about the bad moments. And I think there should be more talk around bad moments and how we overcome that. And I think
Yeah.
that's the real value that people like. And the authenticity really helps there.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And you said you do this every day,
Almost every day. Yeah.
almost every day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just about every day. Okay. So one last point about or question about selling. So you clearly have a niche. Let me see. I think you said it a few times. So startups, scale ups, and tech companies,
Yep.
correct?
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Good job there. And did you decide that as you were, like you said, kind of learning the ecosystem in Berlin, or did you know like that's what I'm passionate about, or what led to that?
I mean, in the beginning, there was zero passion about. I didn't even know anything about startups. I knew that there was this startup world that
Mhm.
existed here in Berlin, but I really got into it when consulting people for their personal insurances. and seeing, hey, a lot of these people work at these companies called startups. A lot of them are founders of these companies called startups. Well, what does that side of thing look like? And that's how I got into it and
Mhm.
realized, okay, so the challenges that these people face on a personal level, they're experiencing on the company level when it comes to their insurance. Let's take a look. Let's see what happens. And that's how I got into it. So again, I knew nothing about the startup ecosystem, the funding world, VC. I had zero knowledge. It's something that I kind of stumbled into and just kept educating myself on. And yeah, it's been a few years now, and I feel I know way more than I did when I started.
Okay. And is that part of what makes selling easier,
I
having a
I
niche?
think so. I think so. You know, definitely having a niche and paired with that is understanding the types of clients that you talk to, because the feedback that we get oftentimes is, hey, when we talk to you, you just understand how a startup works, right?
Hmm.
You know our world, whereas the traditional broker most times doesn't. So if you educate yourself in the environment that these companies live in, it just helps so much when you have these consultations and talks and really positions yourself as someone that just gets it.
Hmm. Okay. What other, do you have any rules for selling or like approach to selling that you could impart, or is it all just intuitive?
I think selling, or I know selling is something that can be learned. It's definitely a science. The first thing to realize is that you're dealing with other humans. I think a lot of salespeople don't put an emphasis on this. There's this ugly spray and pray approach where it's like very robotic, it's scripted. Just for me, what works is just being human and keeping it real. It's a conversation with another person. I'm very curious about my clients. I love getting glimpses into their worlds and learning what they do. And I think that helps this quote unquote sales process because you connect with them first on a human, individual level. And then it's no secret, the context of that meeting is about insurance or maybe risk. And if you're able to establish and build that rapport first, well, when you get into the technical stuff, it's so much easier. It's so much more of a natural transition versus what I see with German salespeople. And sorry, this is something that irritates me. It's very features driven. You go into sales consultation and they immediately start talking about all the bells and whistles about their product and how great everything is, which it may be, but where's the connection with the person? You know, if it's an hour meeting, they talk for 55 minutes about how great their offering is, and then there's 5 minutes at the end. So yeah, by the way, how you doing? How's everything?
Hmm. Hmm.
And to me, I look again, I deal with a completely different set of people. Maybe that does work with the native population here, but with the founders that I work with, that does not fly.
That is a cultural difference
Yes.
that I have really come to appreciate or at least understand. And that's why I said you seem like you're probably good at selling. I meant it as a compliment. I really think Americans, I mean, painting with a broad
Yeah,
brush,
yeah.
are good salespeople. That
Yes.
that is like part of American DNA, and you have, and they that is not always good. Sometimes people sell stuff that and make it sound like something it isn't. And Germans, are notorious for being great engineers and building great things,
Yes,
but like
yes.
they don't know how to sell.
Yeah,
Not
it's
always, but it's like, and yes, it does have these amazing features, but that's, I'm a big Donald Miller fan and like, speaking to people's aspirations and dreams and everything. And it's like, okay. But yeah, I think that is it. That is definitely a cultural difference. Again, painting with a very broad brush,
yeah,
but
totally. And it's not meant to be something bad, right? I think
yeah.
all cultures have their great sides. And the motto or mantra that I've taken for myself is, first understand what's good and apply it to yourself from all these different cultures. So the three cultures that I swim in the most are American, Turkish, and German. So I always say, dream like an American, start like a German, or let me rewind, dream like an American, start like a Turk, and finish like a German.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
great.
So
That's
when
good.
you apply the good from the different cultures, it helps.
Okay, so start like an American. I
Well,
get
you got
that.
to dream like an American
Dream
first.
like an American. And then why? Tell me about start like
Start
a
like a
Turk.
Turk. Yeah, Turkish people always have great ideas. They always want to do stuff. They get started, but I don't see the follow through most times.
Okay.
meaning they just sort of let it die out.
Okay. Okay.
With Germans, on the other hand, whatever they start, most of the times they finish. And I love that. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's combining all three elements and making them all work for you.
Oh, that's great. I think you just gave me the title for this episode.
There you go.
Okay, so while I mean, I think we talked about the bureaucracy quickly and stuff, and what are the pros? Any other things that are a little bit of a challenge of running a company in Germany?
Well, not knowing the language could definitely be a problem. Thankfully, it's not so much of an issue here in Berlin because I
Hmm.
feel like English is the de facto
Does
language of the
anybody speak
city.
German there?
Exactly. It's like when you speak German, it's like, what are you doing? You need to know your market. You need to make sure that that market exists here in Germany. So, coming here with like a pure American mindset and approach doesn't always work, right? You have to also be adaptable and understand how you need to tailor your approach to the specific needs of the country here. So not knowing that or not realizing that and not executing on it will definitely lead to problems. And running a business in general is tough. It's not
Mhm.
easy. So I don't care which part of the world you're in. And anyone who says it's easy, that they don't have is full of themselves. It's just it's something that requires a lot of dedication and energy. And for anyone who's contemplating starting their own thing, just know that it's not to scare you away, but it's to understand what you're signing up for.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's not for everybody too, right? That's the other thing. I think a lot of people fantasize that, if they form their own business, everything's going to be great. It can be, but you're going to need to put in a lot of work, a lot of sweat, a lot of tears to get there. So keep that in mind if you plan on starting your own business.
Okay. Good advice. And you can talk about this or not if you want, but I noticed the other day you posted something about being a part of Vision Lab, being in a Vision Lab cohort. Do you want to talk about that
Yeah,
or?
absolutely. So Vision Lab is a wonderful program that's part of Early Bird Venture Capital. And Vision Lab's mission is supporting founders with a migrant background.
Mhm.
They're one of the few that actually follow through on this, meaning they walk the walk, and I love that because there's a lot of founders here that have a migrant background who may not necessarily have access to all the resources and networks that are required to form a startup and run a business. So Vision Lab helps with that. And there's a lot of other areas they provide assistance with. So whether it's refining your pitch, getting plugged into networks that can propel your startup forward, including investors, there's a lot of support that they offer. And we're proud to be in cohort number 5.
Mhm.
And for me, it's a super special moment because I've been supporting the program for quite some time now. And it's a bit of a first full circle situation where we're now actually participating in it. So there's, I believe, 12 startups across 17 nations. Don't quote me on that, but it is a very diverse group of founders and startups based here in Berlin and across Germany. And we're looking forward to the next 6 months and what it'll bring for us.
Oh,
And
wow,
also, and also what we can contribute to them as well.
that's great.
Yeah.
I talked the episode before yours will be Lila Zohaib of the Migrant Accelerator.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm actually working for a client now, and she's like a UX person basically, but works with an organization called Singa. She's in
Hmm.
Stuttgart that kind of does the same thing. She's a mentor there, but a lot of I just kind of was living my life here for a long time, and until I did this gig and started this podcast, I really didn't understand how much amazing stuff is happening in Germany right now, especially with the migrant, expat, immigrant community, whatever you call it. But I also didn't know that after this America, Germany is the most immigrated country. That's the thing.
Oh, okay.
It's
That's
number
yeah, I
two.
didn't know that
It's a
either.
far
Okay.
second, but the next one is Germany. I would have thought Canada or something, but it's Germany.
True, true. Yeah, I
It's
mean, there's a ton of people with a migrant background in this country. There's a ton
yeah,
of wonderful people. And I think if you look at the stats, it's either 1 in every 3 or 1 in every 4. So it's not a small number.
yeah.
And the truth is, it's great to have these organizations that support individuals like that, myself included. I firsthand grew up seeing the challenges of being someone or being the son of someone in a country where you don't know the language, you don't have the resources, you have no money, you have no network. I mean, my dad came there as a refugee with nothing through typical immigrant mentality and hard work and perseverance. He was able to, raise us and provide us with what we needed. We weren't rich by any means, but we weren't hungry at the same time. So there's a ton of people who come to this country, even those that are born here to migrant parents, oftentimes don't have the access to the networks and resources they need. So yeah, the Migrant Accelerator, led by Lila, is one great organization. You have Migrant, you have Two
Yeah,
Hearts,
right.
and there's a few others that have popped up, I would say, within the last 3 to 4 years that have grown into great communities and have provided wonderful support to the people who need it the most.
Yeah. Do you feel like you have an advantage as an American?
That's such a good question. Sometimes, yes. I'm going to keep it real. There is a weight or benefit to being an American.
Yeah.
There's a variety of reasons for that,
Mhm.
because of pop culture and just
Mhm.
America as, the leader in entertainment and just being so
Mhm.
well known as a country and culture across the world. It really depends on the situation, I think.
Mhm.
So with the Ausländerbehörde, for example, there was definitely some advantages to that because some of my friends who aren't from America that look like me have had and I also had difficult times, but not as difficult as they did. So there is advantage in that respect. There's also advantage in coming from that business world and applying that mentality to your business efforts here in Germany. I think that really gives Americans an advantage because we come from a completely different style of doing business. In some aspects, it is a bit more advanced and better. And when people get a taste of that here, and by people, I mean native people, they're like, oh, this is like a completely different way of handling business. I like this. What is this? So those definitely, yeah, those are definitely advantages.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. All right. So wrapping up, I am just going to ask if you have any lessons learned, advice, or things you would have done differently if you had to start all over again.
In life or in Germany?
In let's say with your business now.
Truth be told, I wouldn't have formed a business entity in Germany. I know that's very sad and harsh to hear for some people, but there's a lot of challenges and disadvantages that come along with that. However, we have no choice, meaning us as insured, we have no choice because we're in a regulatory environment and have to have a business entity here in Germany. But this isn't just something that I feel. There's a lot of founders that I speak with who, if they were asked that same question, they would respond with the same answer. And it goes beyond the bureaucracy. It's also the taxation that's such a burden here. And it's upsetting because there are ways to do it that support newly formed companies, especially startups, right? So if you look at other countries in Europe who have sort of figured this out, it would be a matter of using that as a source of inspiration and tailoring it here for the German market and really like supporting this ecosystem because there's so many good minds with so many good ideas who can really contribute a lot to this society. But the sad reality is a lot of people are leaving this country because of a lot of the hurdles that they face. So I hope one day soon the mindset changes because it's not due to a lack of resources. There's a ton of
Mhm.
resources in this country. The people who are in positions to be able to actually make these changes need to have a shift in their mindset and understand the greater opportunity that's available. And with the organizations that I mentioned earlier, a lot of them are pushing hard to make these changes. And we do see things going in the right direction. And I'm hopeful for a better future where people will flock to Germany to form
Mhm.
businesses and get established here. But until we get to that point, there's a lot of work to be done.
Are you talking specifically like here you can have an LLC or a limited or that kind of thing?
No, I mean you can set up a variety of different types of business entities, right? So
Mhm.
you can have an UG, a GmbH,
Yeah.
or other forms. I think it's the processes and being able to actually establish those types of business entities that's the problem, right? And that's just one piece of the puzzle. So if you look at other countries, oftentimes you can do this online in a
Mhm.
matter of days
Mhm.
with
Mhm.
very little cost.
Mhm.
Whereas here, if you're forming a GmbH, there's a certain amount of money that you need to put in.
Mhm.
There's a certain process that you need to go through, which involves a lot of paperwork, which
Mhm.
involves a notary. Then
Mhm.
X amount of time goes by before you're actually able to be up and running, and then you need to wait for your tax number, but some companies can't charge their clients until they get that tax number. We hear companies waiting for 16 weeks, and then you need to open up a bank account, but you can't do this without that, and then you're in a chicken. So it's like all of these silly things that can be easily solved, but until the mindset is there to say, hey, look, we really need to revamp this whole situation and make it easier for people to form companies and really create an environment to push entrepreneurship. It's going to be tough until we get there. And again, this isn't my opinion. This is the opinion of so many people that I deal with, work with a ton of founders, and we keep on hearing this time and time again. And the thing that hurts me the most is people are actually making the decision to pick up and leave this country, which really stinks because, again, there's so much opportunity. There just needs to be an environment which supports these types of companies and entrepreneurs.
Yeah, that's true. Have you heard of a guy named Bharat Chowdhury?
No.
If I ever do this, I'm going to have like a short mini series called FU Germany, because he's an Indian guy, and he came here and he studied, and he actually decided he did it all in German, like he learned German. Props. And he was like a super hustler, and he had a whole YouTube series of like, his whole thing was he was helping people in India do all the paperwork to get to the university, blue card visas. And he had that, and he had an Airbnb business, and he had all this stuff, and he had this great YouTube series on like, this is how you do everything in Germany. And then I was like going through all his videos, and then there's one, and he's like, why I moved to Romania.
Exactly.
And he's just like, I set up a company here for €1. It's amazing. And I was like, oh, he's gone. And there's another big Squarespacer, Paige Brunton. You probably don't know who she is. She's a big Squarespace influencer. She married a German guy, and was like, oh, he's going on. And then one day the video came out, why I moved to the UK, I couldn't take it anymore, and it's all the same kind of thing. So
I mean, look, as we said in the beginning of this conversation, as an American, when you move here, you realize there's so many good things in this country, right? Not everything is bad, but the areas that are bad can be improved. Yeah. Like I said, I do see improvement. We're going to get there eventually. It's going to take some time, but until the right mindset is there with the powers that be, change, it's going to take some time. It's going to take some. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. And to me, the risk is mitigated in the fact that you have, a social culture where you're not going to end up on the street if you fail and all that.
And not have to worry about going bankrupt due to a hospital bill, which sadly so many people have to go through in the U.S. And public transportation is great here in this city. I mean, there's a lot of benefits, but as always, there's room for improvement, and I'm looking forward to the day where these things are improved in the business and entrepreneurship world here in Germany.
Okay, one last question, and then I'll let you go. Just to clarify, you cannot, or can you, because I remember when this is years ago, thinking about going freelance, and I thought, oh, I can incorporate in the UK and have like a small limited and do business here, but then Brexit happened. But can you have like your business incorporated somewhere else and still do business here?
From what I understand, yes. It also depends on the type of business you're doing and the industry that you're in. I think you can only do it that way up until a certain point, because then there's tax implications. So I'm not a tax person. I'm not a legal person. I don't know the ins and outs. I know it's doable. I feel it's only up to a certain point, but this shouldn't even be a conversation, right? Yeah. Why should people even have to think about forming an entity outside of this country to make it easier for them? Let's just make it easier for everybody.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you so much for being on the show, John. It was great to meet you in person.
My pleasure.
And I look forward to seeing you more on LinkedIn, and maybe one day in Berlin. Who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It was great. Thank you.
Problem.
Thanks for listening. You can find this episode and all other episodes of the Germany Expat Business Show at my website at www.eleanormayerhofer.com/podcast. That's www.eleanormayerhofer.com/podcast.